Hey everyone, we are on the road to 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Make sure to hit subscribe for more insights. Also, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and share this with someone who might benefit. Remember, the world needs great leaders more than ever before, so go be great. Now, let's jump into this episode of The Business of Advice. This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. So this is something we've never done before, but it was pretty fun. Dave and I got a chance to sit down and really talk about, I think, the biggest lessons that we've learned in business over the past 20 years. So we're celebrating our 20-year anniversary, which is pretty hard to believe. But we just decided, with this being the 100th episode of The Business of Advice, I've never actually interviewed you, even though you're the person I probably know the most in all of this. So, yeah, it should be fun. We'll see how this goes.
I'm excited to chat and share our stories, man. I think it'll be great.
Well, I think, and as we walk through these, I said we kind of arranged them a little bit, I guess, in chronological order. It's like, hey, from when we started, what were some of the early lessons, but then as the business grew, so it starts with three of us, 1,000 plus employees we've got today. So, like, you learn new lessons as the business grows and scales and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're going to walk everyone through those lessons. I said 7. We actually came up with kind of a bonus 8th one that I think applies universally forever, right? It's one of those that it's the business got bigger, we figured out. It's something that sticks there. So we'll just jump into kind of these lessons or principles. You ready to go?
Absolutely.
Okay, first one. So this is the first I guess you would say lesson that we learned, but it really, as we were talking, it's what makes for a good business. And I know you have it happen a lot. I know I have it happen a lot. People reaching out to us wanting to talk, especially here locally, as they are thinking about starting a business. They're like, hey, I want to come talk to you about, like, what'd you guys do to make this business successful? And we've talked about that, some of the components. And so this first one is like, really, what are the things that have to be in place for you to be able to build a great business, something that can grow and scale? And I know we talk about this a lot when people do come talk to us. I think you and I could tell in almost 5 minutes if a business is going to succeed or not based on kind of these 4 core things. So I'll maybe throw these out, and then if you want to add any like color around this, but I think the first thing that we would look for, or here's another way to say it, if I were starting a business all over again today, right? If AE went away and we were starting all over again, these are the things that we would look for in either starting a business, buying a business, doing something. And I think the first one is low cost of capital to start. So when you look at that can be your CapEx expenses, so equipment, stuff like that, or people, right? Sometimes certain businesses you have to start with a bunch of people. We started this business. I know advisors with us have heard it. I don't know that everyone else has, but started the business, me, you, Derek, and $135,000, which in retrospect may have been underfunded a little bit, but it works. So any thoughts around that, just like low cost of capital?
I think one of the things we benefited from early, at least launch, but I don't know if it's a lesson you can do in a very big business, but we were very intentional, I remember, in the early days about the cost of people.
Yeah.
And we kept people really aligned. It wasn't so much a profit sharing strategy, but we had people making 10% below market rates, maybe 20% below market rates, but we offset all that with, if the business was performing, we had huge aligned bonuses.
Yep.
Early on, 40 to 50%. And, we had to change that over time to recruit top quality people. But I think that lesson that stuck with me all along was, again, going back to the cost associated with it, we didn't let things get out of control. We were very, very thoughtful in how we used that capital. And then we also got everybody on board with the perfect alignment with the business. Everybody wanted to win for exactly the same reasons, for their own personal reward, which worked great. Now, as I said, as things got bigger, we obviously had to adjust that. But in those early days, I think there was a great lesson.
Well, and that cost of capital on the people, there was 3 of us, and we didn't make any money. Shout out to our wives for having good jobs at the time to support us, so we were able to do that. And then one thing you just said that I hadn't, in our notes prepping, hadn't even thought about, a lot of our hires early on, and this is where I see other businesses make a mistake. If you think back, almost all our early hires were revenue generating roles. Yep. Like, we were probably light on operations, heavy on sales. And I see so many businesses where they go heavy on operations because they think they've got to build this way, and they don't have anyone to go drive revenue. To your point, a lot of those early people, we didn't pay them a lot, but they were getting this, if they sold or brought in revenue, benefiting from that. So that's one. So low cost of capital. The second is good margin on the business. So that's, I use this example. You've heard me use it a lot, even in our new hire thing. We started this business with 3 people, $135,000, good margin business. We're able to make money very quickly. And obviously we've been able to scale it from, what we do, 40, 45 million that first year in premium, and
correct.
did 22 billion last year. So really able to scale it. As you know, I invest in some restaurants or own some restaurants. The Pennant cost $2.5 million to open. We had to staff it with 55 people day one. We make our money literally 10 cents at a time, a transaction, right? So it's just a low margin business where I think just looking for a business that has good margin is critical too. So just any thoughts around that?
I also think as you're growing that margin, even a conversation I have with advisors today, I don't think we run it that much different today. I think we always knew we wanted to have a margin target. And I think early on, that margin target was higher. Because, again, we didn't have the buffer room. But, in our minds, I think early on it was around a 35% margin. And when we thought about that, what it did was it gave us that buffer conversation when if the business popped up to 45%, it was easy to make decisions. Are we going to invest more in a new program? Are we going to invest more in a new training? How are we going to add more value back to our clients with that additional margin? But on the other front, by having that buffer margin, I think we've been asked for years, you guys on edge, you guys struggle, when you have good margin buffer, you don't have to feel a lot of stress and strain. So that discipline of saying, hey, man, this is kind of the floor of the margin, and understand when you're over that, you actually invest the capital instead of going the other way, which is you just kind of chase hopes and dreams. And you're like, I think there's this huge opportunity. You throw that capital. We've never really been that way. We've been very diligent in maintaining quality margins. Frankly, because it not only protects the jobs of all the people around here, it also gives a lot of owner sanity and owner confidence.
Well, I think it's okay if your margin shrinks a little as your total revenue grows, right? Correct. That's what ours has done. A little higher margin when we started. It's obviously shrunk a lot, but add a lot more value today than we did back then. I think the third thing that we talked about in this, the 4 things that you would look for in a business. So this is just, lesson 1. What makes for a good business is you need to find a complacent industry with a low barrier to entry. And I think that described our business 20 years ago for sure.
Yeah, and I think with us, again, we were 26, 27 years old, and we were in a business where most of the other marketing companies like us, their owners were in their 50s. I remember going to meetings, and the comment was, I would go in, fly in the night before, eat one dinner, and go to the meeting and fly home while they stayed around and played golf for 2 days. And they're like, why are you leaving? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I like working hard, and I have a family at home, and I enjoy those 2 things an awful lot. I think that was sign number 1, that our competitors weren't very aggressive. I think the other thing was, with that, in a complacent industry, sometimes you see that the messages or the value add is all the same. We've talked for years about the 4 core principles writing down the kitchen table. When we did that, we were trying our best to do something we did not see done in the space. We did not see, as an example, organizations that had multiple producers that were part of the organization training and sharing value. Most organizations, if they had one incentive trip, that was a lot. And we immediately stepped into a vision where we were going to have multiple training events. Early on, that was 3 or 4 a year. I mean, today, I think it's 40 or 50 events we do every single year.
60 last year, actually.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, meeting with our event team. Yeah.
But it goes down to the foundational difference. We made a decision that we weren't just going to be an incentive trip company. We were going to be a training and development company, making sure if you can find complacent leadership, but then also find real market differentiation, I think it's really important, man. It can skyrocket your growth.
I think that's what's helped us long term. It's that, we do view ourselves kind of as a training development company, right? We want to make good advisors, great business owners. But I think the other benefit we've seen out of that I'm not saying you can't duplicate it today. I see some people trying, but it's created this community that I don't think we anticipate, right? Our original vision was bring good advisors together. We all learn from each other, get to benefit from all learning. But now it's become like a community, right? I don't know how many advisors would tell you, the majority of their best friends that they talk to and spend the most time with are other advisors now at AE because of that. So I think that's good. So find an industry with a low barrier. That's the other thing. It didn't really take much for us to get in. We had some of those relationships at the insurance company level, and a few of them were willing to give us contracts early on, but we were able to figure that out. Hey everyone, sorry to take you away from the video. If you find this video helpful, make sure to hit the subscribe button for more insights. Also, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And share this with someone who might benefit. Remember, the world needs great leaders more than ever before, so go be great. Now let's jump back into this episode of The Business of Advice. I think the fourth component is just, it's got to be a scalable business, right? It doesn't have to be, but that's what we would look for if you want something that can grow and scale. And obviously this has grown and scaled like crazy, but I don't know if there's a whole lot more to add there, but yeah, try and find a scalable business. So
Absolutely.
Anyone's listening, if you're starting to think about starting a business, like make sure those four things are in place: low cost of capital, good margin, complacent industry with low barrier, and scalable. It's also why I tell our advisors all the time. It's why I think being a financial advisor is such a great business. There's very few things that are as noble that you get to help so many people, be there for their highs and lows, but also all these components are in place right there. It really makes for a good business. Okay, that's first lesson. Second lesson: all things being equal, the business that provides the best experience will always win. And I think we've always said, we're not confused. We are in the service industry. Like, we don't make stuff. What really matters to us is the service that we provide, the experience that we provide. So you just want to talk maybe a little bit about like the thought behind that?
I think one thing we talk about with even every teammate that we add to our team is one of the keys for our long-term success as we think about it is, we don't manufacture a product per se at Advisors Excel. We just provide service. And so if I think about that, is all services provided by people. And so I really think there's two components of that have to work unbelievably effectively. Number one, if you've got people, you've got to be able to train them very effectively, because I hate to say this, nobody went to school to work at an FMO, and my guess is no matter any of our businesses, that's not why they did it. That's not why they went there. They learned skills, but you really have to train them into your skills and the way you want to do it and how you want to do it. And so not only the skills, but what I would say is the culture, which is, at Advisors Excel, we want to create the ultimate customer experience. So when you're training them into, these are the processes I need you to go through, this is how you treat things, this is how you act, and then you put a cultural line like ultimate customer experience on top of it, all of a sudden you can really get teammates from all walks of life, whether that's a Starbucks barista, a bank teller. They can come from pretty much anywhere, and we can be unbelievably effective. So if you get the training right, I think that's core. I think the second thing that you've got to get right is you've got to put a really positive culture around them, where they know you care as much about them as you would like them to care about your clients. And one of my greatest rewards I love when when a teammate calls in or an advisor calls into our office and they're like, "Man, David, your receptionists are absolutely fantastic." And it's because they come with the right attitude every day. They come with energy, positivity, and then we put a culture around them that harbors that. So if you can get your training and your culture right, I think you can actually deliver what is a world-class product. And in our case, it is that service that we have to deliver. But you got to get both of those things right. You skimp on either one, and I'll be honest, it's really hard for a grumpy person to deliver a great customer experience.
A few things I'll add there that I know we talked about, but I think going back to people ask us a lot, why do you guys focus so much on the culture? And I know one of our principles from early is if we can hire great people and they enjoy coming to work, they're probably going to do a better job providing a great experience. So I think that's a big part of it, right? Is that we want people to enjoy being here, because I think if you're at work and you're in a good mood, chances are you're going to provide a better experience. Hiring good people, I think trying to figure out those processes where you're getting people who are servant-minded. And then one of the things I know we would say, we lucked into this, kind of dumb luck, but the community service stuff that we started doing, probably 8-9 years ago, has been such a huge, we'll have to do a whole separate episode on that. Actually, maybe we'll do it when we talk about impacting the community. But, with our team going out and volunteering, you and I, for years, did every final interview. And I think 9 out of 10 people, when we would ask, why do you want to come work here? And they would say, man, we see all this great stuff you're doing out in the community, serving in the community, and we want to be a part of that. So I said all the time, if you're a service-based business, and you're attracting servant-minded people, it's kind of a win-win there. So second thing is that all things being equal, the business that provides the best experience always wins. Okay, third one. So remember, we're kind of taking these in a little bit of a chronological order as we were building the business, but it's and we've kind of talked around this a little, but here's how I would describe the lesson. One way for things not to be equal, so what we just talked about, if all things were being equal, you have to provide the best experience. But one way for things not to be equal is to be the company that adds more value. And I think from the beginning, we've always asked the question, how can we add more value to our clients who happen to be these independent financial advisors? So I'll just throw it up. Thoughts around this principle?
One thing I would tell you, first thing I would say is, I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to stay close to the client. I know you and I are both the same way. People ask us all the time, what's your day look like? And I think you and I still spend over 25% of our time.
We came to record this off the call with one of our top advisors, right?
And you can't get us away from it.
Yeah.
We absolutely love it. So I think that it goes to not only the entrepreneurs, but your leaders in your organization. You need to make sure the entrepreneurs and the leaders are always staying close to clients, because in order to deliver more value, you have to understand that client. You have to understand them deeply and what they have going on in their lives and in what they need. Because the last thing you want to do is be constructing a bunch of services or benefits or value to the client that doesn't hit home.
Yeah.
Because you only can do so many things well. And so, number one, I think it's really important in that side that you keep your executives along with the entrepreneur close to the client.
I think one of the things there, too, I'll just say I think we've done well, and part of it just goes into what you said, being plugged into where your clients are at, is the value we provide has evolved through the years, right? Right now is a perfect example. While we're recording this, we have 112, I think, people in our office for our elite team training, which is our team doing training for our advisors' teams. Not the advisor, right? The advisor's not in here, but their team. When we started 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't a need for most of our advisors at all, right? It was much more sales, marketing. But now as you look at these advisors are building these great businesses to where they have a huge team that is running this, like that's become a big deal. Thing we're doing later this year is our leadership team training. So now it's not just that it's an advisor with a few key team members. Now it's like advisor, leadership team, and 25, 30 staff underneath them. So they need help developing their leadership team. So that's why, that wasn't a huge need 5 years ago. Today is these advisors scale, like helping develop their leadership team. So that's why we're doing the retreat training later this year that will be all around their leadership team. So, but I think if you look through, I always love the story about when we hired Marcus to build our website. I think you were the one who asked him. He's like, because he built us a really cool website. This was probably, 07, 08, somewhere in there. And I think you asked him, could you, build a website like this for the advisors that work with us? And I think he kind of laughed at us. He's like, yeah, that's what I do. I build websites, So that was the start of where, you think back then, it's kind of crazy to think today, but 07, 08, half the advisors didn't even have a website, right? Or if they had one, it was really, really bad. So we started building these cool websites for free for advisors, and they thought it was the greatest thing ever. Now, and I don't know if you have any wisdom around this, that evolved from there to could we do graphic design stuff for them? Can we, and then that's evolved into now we do full-blown radio production and TV production and video production and digital marketing. And it just kept growing and growing and growing to, that creative team started with one person, Marcus. And I think there's about 215 people total in our creative team today. The only reason I bring that up, and I don't know if you have any wisdom to share around this, is it also does create a bit of a beast, right? So now it's like we're doing so much and trying to do it all well, and it's a terrible business model from the standpoint of we have 600 independent small business owner clients. We do all the work for free pretty much, and they want it done tomorrow. So it's like a tough thing to manage and scale. So just anything around how to just think through as you're adding value, how to continue to do it in a way that's not going to cripple the organization also.
I know we're going to talk a little bit later about how we got into the scaling up program, generating kind of our strategic initiatives for the company. But I do think one great practice in the middle of that is not only asking yourself, what can we do new, but what can we do with an existing program to make it either more impactful for our clients?
Yeah.
And I think you have to balance that. I don't think you ever want to be doing all your stuff existing. I don't think you ever want to do all your stuff new, because what we've found, I think, over time is a new program, I hope our advisors don't kill us for this, is really hard for the first year. There's a lot of learning lessons we have to all go through in figuring out this stuff. I wish we would say we launch and every time it's bang, 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 perfect. It's not, because you've got your clients utilizing a tool that you thought was 100% right, it's probably only 70% right. And you're going to spend a lot of time fixing it. But when you go in to look at it in maybe an existing program, either that's a bolt-on on something you have already or something you're doing where you can expand it. I think the difference is you can roll those things out, and the odds of them being right are a lot higher. And so you're not going to have as much time invested in the editing and the changing. On top of that, if you're a client working with your company, if you balance some new and some existing, I think you can actually do a few more rollouts. If you're constantly doing new stuff, you actually should do less because it's going to be harder. Where if you balance your year where you're like, I've got 2 really good new things and 2 things where I'm going to expand an existing program, you can get 4 things out there that feel new to your clients and do it effectively. Where if you just did the new, you might have only got 3 new things, knowing that. So I find that balance of asking those questions and strategic planning around, am I going to introduce something brand new? Or am I going to take an existing program that's already working and do it a little better, or change it up, or add to it to show my clients we're going to constantly deliver value?
I think in mature business is too. Also, that becomes a bigger deal, right? How do you just improve? Because adding value can be that we improve something we're already doing. I would say even in ours, I think as you say that, you look at our wealth division, right? So AE Wealth. Shout out to all those advisors who joined us in 16 and 17 when we were just launching that thing, right? Because you look at what that looked like 7-8 years ago compared to what it looks like today. And I'm thankful for those people who joined us early. They put up with a lot of growing pains, because we started that with 5 employees maybe or something like that. But you got to think, we're trying to launch a new division inside of this very mature organization. And it's like that team just gets hit with a tidal wave because fortunately our advisors have trusted us over the years that we're always going to work to do it well. And a lot of them joined probably before, like you said, we were ready. Today, though, I mean, you look at, and I don't even, like some of the things that you all, that's more your department than mine, right, that are rolling out over there, the OCIO services, the product development, just some of the cool stuff they're doing over there. I mean, it's night and day, but I would say advisors are as excited about the things, maybe more excited about the things we're rolling out today, even though, as you said, they're kind of add-ons to what is already the mature business that's there. So just any thoughts around that?
It's exactly it, Cody. I mean, I look at what we spent about 5 years really laying a foundation, doing a lot of the hard, ugly, tough stuff that you got to do. You got to get compliance right. You got to try to get technology right. All these things that are structurally necessary to be excellent. You got to get a team built, truthfully. I mean, even we started with 5 people. Not one person around here knew wealth management when this started. We now have 200 people. Average tenure of people now are approaching 4 years. And so we've now got a structural team that's completely built out. And frankly, I love now the annual retreats that we do because we really are talking about innovation and differentiation. Even recently, we've sat down with two of our leading custodians. We were going over what we've been doing, and they're like, "You guys understand? You're doing stuff that no one else in the entire country is doing." And we're like, well, kinda. But we're having a lot of fun. It really gets fun when you can go to that level.
Cool. Okay. So third lesson was one way for things not to be equal is to add more value. Fourth lesson, man, this is a big one. And this is the one I think you and I probably have conversations with our advisors the most about. And this is if you can figure this out, you're going to grow and scale the business. If you can't figure this out, you're going to cap the growth of the business. And it's this. So this is the fourth lesson. Great people, as long as you empower them and give them authority, are the key to scaling your business. So I'll just toss that one over to you. Where you want to start on that one?
I think it's a great one, in particular when there was 3 of us, myself, you, and Derek, all here. And I actually remember a retreat that kind of exemplified this. And we went in the retreat, and it was going to be our first time where we were kind of asking the team to bring the ideas. And we're like, guys, what do you guys think we should do? And one of our leaders looked us right in the face and said this to the 3 of us: "Why don't you just tell us what you want to do?" And at that moment, I knew we weren't leaders.
Yeah.
I knew what we were doing was we were just bosses. We were running the organization, making all the decisions, pushing all the decisions. I also realized at that same time, and the 3 of us had to go in, no matter which leader came to us, we had to centralize that all into a room of 3 people to try to get a decision to push it out. And so our decision making was so slow. And frankly, that was because not only was our delegation poor, but our communication was challenged. We weren't communicating what the plan was clearly enough to everybody else and having them be part of it. And so because of that, we were holding it all tight. We're like, we got to make every decision. We got to know what's going on around here in every single thing. And really, it stymied a fantastic. We had this. I mean, honestly, the leadership team's been with us all along the way. Most of these people have been here a really long time.
Yeah, average tenure is like 14 years. I just looked at it.
And we weren't giving them a chance to lead. I think in order to shift that, I would tell you some of the big things that I felt like we all grew in. And it was, number one, we had to spend more time individually with those leaders. I think it varies based on my direct report and your direct report, but most of the ones I meet with every week. Some of those I meet with every 2 weeks and some every 3. But we're having 1 hour of uninterrupted conversation in which they're bringing in an agenda and I'm bringing in an agenda, and we're combining those agendas to have conversations around what they're got going on in their business. And frankly, it's kind of cool how it's changed over time. In the past, it was me kind of telling them what to do. Now I don't really tell them anything. The blunt thing, I hope they all don't listen to this because they may feel this way, but it's they come in, they share what they're going to do, and I pretty much rubber stamp it in a good way because they know what they're doing, because now they have the autonomy to lead those teams, and they're just keeping me in the loop on it. And then, yes, there are some things I know that touch all parts of the organization where they want my feedback, and I'm able to give that. And so I think that's really important, that if you're going to do this, it's not just about the delegation. Find the time to allow these leaders to get in your head. I think that was a big shift for us to really make this work. The other thing I would say is you do have multiple partners. Cody's our partners running AE. You've got to stay on the same page, because I think that was another big thing that really changed. Cody and I started meeting 2 hours every single week. I think that allowed us to push that cross communication so that they always knew that you and I were on the same page, so that then when we were telling them, as an example of my annuity leaders in the office and they're asking a question, they know when I speak, I'm speaking for us. And I think that's so important in this whole delegation thing.
Yeah,
partnerships.
Some things I'll maybe reiterate that you said there. That communication's big, right? People will they'll put someone in a leadership role, but then not spend the time with them to clearly communicate and articulate how they think, what they're thinking about the business. I know both of us have gotten really good, as you said, about, I think for a long time the leaders would come to us with the problem and want us to provide the solution. I think we both, my buddy Brad, I know this was talked about in his podcast, but like the 1-3-1 method of like, what's the problem? What are your 3 suggested solutions, and which one do you think we should do? I think we've both done a better job of asking that question, like, what do you think we should do, versus them just come to us. So I think that's a big one. But it is that ability to, here's why I think this is such a big one, and it's the key to scaling or not. As a founder, you're so used to knowing and touching and being able to understand everything going on in the business. And it's scary to step away from that, especially as the business is growing and you're starting to have success. You feel like if you don't know everything going on, it's going to get out of control. And some people can get through that and some can't. But it's if you can't, and I think we both struggled with it there probably 8-9 years ago, but have kind of got on the other side of that in a good way. Dan Martell said at World Series, 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. So it's like getting to that point where you really can let go of some of those things and know. People ask us all the time now at our events, hey, what's going on here? And we're like, well, we don't really know anymore. Where I used to know everything going on, but to see what our team's able to do now that we've empowered them. So that communication's important, the empowerment of it, and making sure that you're letting them go, I think is also just a huge, huge part of that. So one final thing I would say about that too, when you do this, like, I don't think anyone here would ever question if you and I are the most committed to growth in this organization, right? I think we're going to do another podcast episode on the leadership lessons we've learned, not just business lessons, but more specific on leadership. But one of those who always say leaders have to lead by action, right? You set the pace. Your people that you empower also have to be as committed to growth. And I think we've had examples through the years of we've had to take people out of leadership positions because they became complacent. So as you put those people in those roles, they've got to grow faster than the organization also, which we'll talk about a little later too. So, okay, that was number 4, that great people, as long as you empower and give them authority, are the key to scaling. Lesson number 5. This is a big one. Not everyone that starts with you is going to finish with you, and that's okay. And this is a weird one for some people to process. I think for us, the first real one was probably when Derek stepped away from the business. We went through that process to buy him out. But really, if you look back over our last, but that was a big one where I'm like, I just don't know how. Like, it's been the three of us forever. How's this going to go? What's this going to look like? And you start to ask a lot of questions. But I think you look back over the last 7 or 8 years. So one of our 3 founders left. I think 80% of all our VPs of business development are gone. 2 of those left and went and started a competing firm and started taking advisors and employees away, right? So now you're competing with people who were long-term friends, which is a little weird. I counted David Fronsky as our 5th chief marketing officer. So we've had 5 chief marketing officers over this 20-year period of time. So we've had some really key people leave the organization over the years. And I'm not sure, first few times that happened, I think it worried me. Now I kind of expect it. I think I realize not all the people that started with us are going to finish with us, and that's okay. It's funny, I made this note. I was thinking back to those first 5 employees in AE Wealth Management. I don't think any of them are still here, right? Nope. So we've replaced almost all of those. So I guess the only reason I bring that up is it's going to happen to someone who listens to this. And if it's the first time it happens, you think, I don't know if you think it's the end of the world, but you're just not sure how to process it. And I think the idea of, and I say this with us, we say one of our core values is never stop growing. Well, it's probably naive to think some of those people aren't going to reach a point where their growth needs to take place outside of here. So I don't know, and then the final thing I would say here is and we just got to see it in this new role that we hired with Jeremiah, a week or 2 ago, but you've got to always be building bench depth. If there's maybe a lesson that I want to apply there in that, it's you are going to lose some key people. The key is you've got to build this bench depth in your organization. And I think it was fun for us, when we're doing those interviews and moved Jeremiah into that role, as I told you, it's kind of neat to see. Back when the Chiefs had Alex Smith as their starting quarterback and Patrick Mahomes sitting on the bench that first year, it's kind of neat to see we've got some Patrick Mahomes sitting on our bench ready to jump in. So any thoughts there? I know I rambled a while on that one, but
no, I think it was really good. The only thing I want to make sure the only thing I didn't hear you highlight, which I know we've done, is I think you also, especially if you're having an organization that's growing by kind of industry-leading percentages. So some people listening to that may be 10%, some it may be 20%, some of it may be 50%.
Yeah.
If you're growing in industry-leading percentages, you are going to outgrow some of your leaders, and you're just going to have to change them out. And it's going to stink.
Yep.
It's one of the worst things to have happen overall because you want everybody to go with you. It's one thing if somebody quits or you have to fire somebody or this or that, but I think the real challenge becomes is making sure your organization, if you're growing at those paces, you need to make sure you're challenging the people along the way, which is about having accountability meetings with them, whether those are every quarter, whether those are every 6 months, whether those are every month, and being real with those people about where they're at on the spectrum, because you're going to have to do it. Our best example around here has been our compliance officer, our chief compliance officer, which we went through a few people to get Sean Scholes with his capability to be able to do it. And it was not that we had bad people in the role. It was we were growing as a securities organization, and we had teammates that were really great in the insurance space. Yep. And as we grew, we challenged them. I remember sitting down with them. I'm like, you're going to need to get your designations in the security space. I don't know if I want to do that. All right. Well, I guess so. I guess that's an option. And when they passed a few times, all of a sudden we got to a point where we had a unbelievably growing RIA, and frankly, the value out of the insurance CCO had reduced significantly in our organization, and we had to change out good people.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear, I don't feel bad about that because I was over communicating on that. We were thinking ahead. You and I were discussing that as we were going through, and we were communicating with the leader. But if you're growing at those rates, you are outgrowing some of your people. Identify which one they are and try to work with them in advance to get them to come along with you, or they're going to know it's time to change and you got to move somebody else.
Yeah, it's interesting when I talk about those changes we've had, or key people leaving over the last 7 years. It's been a little combo of both, right? Yes, some on their own accord, some that we've had to remove from the role. And I think we've averaged 40% growth a year annually over those 7 years, right? So the only other lesson I would say there, because sometimes you're hesitant to make those changes, anytime you can remove someone, so this is maybe when it's our choice, like when you remove someone who's in a leadership role who's become complacent and you've built that bench depth and you can put Patrick Mahomes into the lineup who's hungry, I mean, it's why we've grown through all of these transitions is like we've built the bench depth, they're ready to go, they're hungry. So I would just say like anytime you replace someone who's kind of complacent with someone who's hungry, the benefits, like you never want to do it. Then after you do it, they're like, why didn't we do this a year ago? Which I think is a big part of it. Okay, lesson number 6 is this. The larger you grow, the more intentional you have to be about your culture. And I'll say, for us, I think for those first, I'll say 20 employees or so, we were in an office crammed together. You saw everyone, you could touch, see, talk to, communicate with every single person every single day. Today with 1,000 people, that's not possible. I hate to say this, but like there's people here who I don't know now, right? As it's grown like that. And I think one of the things we learned along the way, it got a little away from us, if we're being honest. There was a stretch there, I always say employee number, but it was really probably like 2008 to 2011 or 12, somewhere in that stretch where I don't think we were intentional. We were just doing things like we had done with the first 20 employees. And then when we got to 100, it's like, this isn't working. We had to be very intentional. So any thoughts you have there?
Cody, I don't remember. I think it was one of our elite trips. I made up a little grid, and I don't know if I've shared it a lot of times, but when I think about how we built our culture, I think we built it with 3 things in mind as far as the teammate experience. I think we built foundational benefits, I think we built growth benefits, and I think we built fun benefits. And I think you've got to balance all those. So when I say a foundational benefit, those are things like a industry-leading 401k program. For us, that could be health insurance at the low cost, private health insurance with our services that we provide at Oasis. I even think about how we put the cafe in place at half the cost. People have to eat. That's called foundational benefits that you're providing people. When I think about the growth benefits, I think about all the training platforms, whether it's our internal training programs that we provide, whether that's the external training programs we provide, whether it's the quarterly speakers we provide. We're allowing people to grow in their roles. And then the final one is the fun. And that can be everywhere from the pickleball tournament to our employee trip if we hit our big goals. I did skip one thing on the foundation I wanted to hit because I wrote it down here, which is the charitable. I think the charitable is part of our foundation. I think giving to the community is required. But my point is I think if you want to build a great culture, thinking about what you're doing in each of those buckets, foundational, growth, and fun, can really put together a great experience for the teammate outside of just needing to hold your principles and all the things that go into it. But if you can't figure out how to do it, see if you've got some things in those buckets for your team. It'll get you on the right path.
I think even hearing this, Dave, one of the things we've had to do, I kind of said this, we're much more intentional about the culture we're trying to build because you're going to have a culture in your organization, right? You can either shape and craft it, or you can let it shape and craft itself, because technically the culture is just the makeup of all the people that show up. And it's weird, despite the fact that we have a ton of, we have a director of culture, we have, our director of employee initiatives, our director of learning, all these people focused on the culture. We probably spend more time on it today than ever before. Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the things, we'll talk about this in leadership lessons, but it's one of the things you have to do as the leader. I share that because I don't know how to describe this any different than you have to build the culture that you want. I think that's why we're so intentional about it. I see places that either try and mimic stuff that we're doing, but that's really not who the person is. So the culture needs to be a little true to who you are too, right? I think we're both pretty servant-minded. I think we try and attract those type of people. But you said something I think we're viewed as a fun place to work, but I don't know that we do a lot of those fun things you hear other people doing, right? We joke all the time, no ping pong tables in here. Right. We're here to work, right? So I think while we always say we want it to be a fun place to work, we say all the time, we're focused on growth and getting stuff done and achieving first, right? So that's the foundation of everything we do. Yeah, we want to have fun after we achieve, but we want you to show up and work really hard and then get out of here at 5 and go spend time with your family or whatever else you want to do, right? Versus come and goof around all day at work and then have to catch up on stuff after work. Show up and work hard. We're also going to try and do some fun stuff too. So I guess I'd just say be intentional about the culture you want. What we built may be very different than what someone else wants. Someone may want something that's a lot more fun and you play ping pong all day and have nap pods and stuff like that. So that was 6. The larger you grow, the more intentional you have to be about the culture. 7, Your long-term success will be determined by your ability to focus. Big one here, especially for every entrepreneur that listens to this. And I'm probably the worst. I've never seen an opportunity that I don't think's great. I think everyone's going to be a home run, but I think there was a stretch. It was around that Derek transition, really, about 6-7 years ago, where we realized that we were saying yes to way too much, and we were doing a lot of things kind of half-ass and nothing really exceptionally well. One of the things that we did, I know that was great, and I'll have you talk through it, is we had both read the book Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. We hired a scaling up coach to come in, and what I think more than anything, what we took away from that is focus on doing 4 or 5 things with excellence each year that really can move the needle, and align the organization around that. But just maybe talk to that, your ability to say no to things and focus.
Well, I think you captured the front of it really, really well. In my mind, you really do have to get to a hell yes or hell no type attitude, man. If it's not big enough, don't do it. I mean, I think if you think about all the best entrepreneurs you study, whether you look at the Steve Jobs, the Berkshire Hathaways, all of them, even Nike when he came back in and stepped in, almost all of them end up reducing their product lines down to something more focused, or reduce their purchases to things that really matter. I think focus is beating width in almost every business aspect that you're doing. So that intentionality around that's important. But for us to figure that out, we needed a structure. And I think that's where Scaling Up really helped us. If you're not really intentional about your retreat structure, it's an unbelievable opportunity to come together as a leadership group and learn together, number one. Number two, it's also an amazing way to feature your leaders. Today, our leaders do show up with a lot of the strategy and what we're trying to achieve. So it's a great learning opportunity. But more than anything, it gets us focused down to the 5 things that matter. And in that meeting, we're going through 50 options, which is the most powerful thing. And we're going in that meeting saying we're not doing 50, we're going to do 5. We find the best 5, and then we get convicted of them. Not only do we execute better and faster, our clients appreciate it because they get a better product once it's all said and done. So that's been a game changer for us, of going from doing many things to doing a few, having to prioritize and fight for it in a big, big way.
I think one thing we've done really, really well, we're talking about this, is our ability to stay singular focused, right? I think we would identify ourselves as a financial services distribution company that works with independent financial advisors. So it's really easy for us as opportunities come along now. We didn't always do this, right? We bought a print company because we thought that would make sense. And I can't name all the things that, early on that we would say yes to. But now, basically, is it product distribution? If it's not that, probably not, we're going to say no. And then, is it going to add value to our advisors and help them get better? If the answer is no, then we're probably not super interested in that. So I think we've been able to do that. We've gotten distracted over the years, but I think our it's kind of crazy to think our biggest growth has come over these last 7 years, as we've got so singular focused on what we do and what we do well, and just staying committed to that. So that's, I think, what I would tell.
That's pretty crazy. We're literally doing less and growing faster.
Yeah.
I hope everybody caught what Cody just said. We are literally doing less tactics.
Yep.
But we're actually growing faster because of it.
And I think our advisors, that's mainly who listens to this, we see some of them get distracted too, right? So it's we tell them all the time, man, you've got a great business, stay focused. And if you look at Ryan and Tyson, Joel, Matt, some of our top, man, they just stay focused. They do it, rinse and repeat. They know how to build and scale that. So that ability to stay focused is huge. So make sure you're doing that. Read Scaling Up or Traction. Any of those books are great for that. Okay, final lesson, and then we'll get you out of here, because I know both of us actually have an advisor call we're going to. But this is the one that I think is super important, and it has applied from day one, and it still applies today, 20 years later, despite all the growth in the organization here. And it's this, number 8. As the leader or the CEO, you can never get far away from the revenue line. And I think one of the things you and I both have always focused on is, for us, the revenue line is relationship with our advisors, right? Because that's who generates all our revenue for us. But then it's also our sales teams, and staying super close to that, and just paying attention to always driving that revenue line. And obviously, you harp on this all the time, but maybe just any kind of final thoughts on that 8th lesson.
Well, it's exactly what you said. It's really, I think about 3 things for the financial advisor, but any entrepreneur inside of us. I do think the owner's got to stay really close to the message and the value. that you provide, because ultimately for us at AE, that's what keeps our clients happy.
Yep.
So don't get too far from the message and the value. Number two, I really do. I'm still unbelievably involved with our sales teams across the entire organization. I do have sales leaders in those organizations, but I meet with those sales leaders outside of meeting with those division presidents, because sales leadership is everything. It's really where you're training and developing. It's really where you're delivering an awful lot of your value. And then the last thing, and this is maybe the hardest one for some entrepreneurs, for me, it doesn't bother me too much. You got to hold all of those extremely accountable. Whether that's if your message is being held accountable through your marketing efforts, your sales team through their actual results, you've got to take real ownership of that, because that is where, oddly enough, when you were talking earlier, not only can that affect your entire team. The way I think about it at Advisors Excel, we have about 150 people across all the sales teams. They support 850 jobs, and I'm more than happy to remind them about that.
Yep.
Because I think that really matters. They've got to take that ownership of what they do on that sales team and how it impacts the entire team. And you cannot allow complacency to slip into those as a leader. If complacency slips in, it's the cancer that can destroy your organization. And remember, more than anything, one thing I watch is not only, you can watch complacency from the work product standpoint, that can be that's almost laziness.
Yeah.
But don't forget this one, because it's the one I watch for almost more than the laziness, because you don't see that quite as much, is watch the excuses. When excuses start setting in, they're telling the problems with your leads, they're telling you the problem with your recruiting process, they're telling you your problem with whatever they decide. That's not what salespeople should be doing. They should be telling you how to solve those problems to continue to move their business forward. So make sure your accountability is almost a no excuse accountability, and it's really an answer accountability. And then to be clear, go to back to the positive side. And we see this from our sales team all the time. They don't come with excuses. They share a problem with a solution, and we should celebrate the heck out of that, because that's how we keep the momentum going. So I think those are all really, really important.
Yeah,
stay
so
close to that.
Whatever business you're in, you've got to stay attached to the revenue line. You've got to understand, what drives revenue in your organization, and not remove yourself from that. I would say, I think one other thing there in that regard that we've always done really, really well is spend a lot of time understanding our financials, right? So you and I and Amy sit down every month for 3 to 4 hours going deep dive into our financials. Man, we meet people who don't even know their financials. They can't even tell you what they made, what their profit was last year, where we're looking deep dive every single month, have all that figured out. So I think as a, leader in the business, if you want to build and scale a business, like, got to understand, how to move those needles. So, okay, so quick recap, 8 lessons. The 4 key components for a good business that we walked through. Number 2, all things being equal, the business that provides the best experience always wins. Lesson number 3, one way for things not to be equal is to always add more value. Lesson number 4, great people, as long as empowered and given authority, are the key to scaling. Lesson number 5, not everyone that starts with you is going to finish with you, and that's okay. Lesson number 6, the larger you grow, the more intentional you have to be about your culture. Lesson 7, long-term success will be determined by your ability to focus, or as you said, Dave, maybe say no. And then the final lesson, as the leader, CEO, you can never get too far away from the revenue line. So this was fun. We are going to do 2 more. So we're going to do another podcast talking about the biggest leadership lessons that we've learned over the last 20 years. So you go from just 3 of us to now leading 1,000 people. There's a lot of mistakes, I guess, lessons we've learned from mistakes that we've made along the way. So we'll do that. And then we're actually going to talk about how we've been able to leverage. We'll do a 3rd episode that's going to talk about how we've leveraged the business in a way to impact our community in a positive way. So excited for those. Hopefully you got some value out of this. Appreciate everyone who listens to this. It's crazy to think it's been 100 episodes, but just some amazing people along the way. But fun to save the 100th one for the business owner and entrepreneur I know best. So thank you all.
Thank you.